Are you craving a trip on Space Mountain? Well, we've got the next best thing. Welcome to Disney Coast to Coast.
Hey folks, and welcome to Disney Coast to Coast, the ultimate unofficial Disney fan podcast. I'm Jeff DePaoli, and today on the show, I have Disney Coast to Coast patron Diego Parada Herrera joining me to finish up, for now, the PrimeTime at the Park segment of Disney Coast to Coast. If you're unfamiliar, this is where we take a look at a TV sitcom that's shot inside one of the Disney parks. The only show we haven't yet talked about is the sitcom Step by Step. In case you're unfamiliar, Step by Step was an American sitcom that aired for 7 seasons from 1991 through 98, mostly as part of the ABC TGIF lineup. Patrick Duffy and Suzanne Summers starred as single parents, each with 3 children, who wed and formed a blended family. So it has some serious Brady Bunch vibes as far as the concept is concerned. The episodes we'll be discussing today are We're Going to Disney World Parts 1 and 2, which were episodes 522 and 523 of the series. They originally aired on May 3rd and 10th in 1996. You can now stream this show on HBO Max, Apple TV, and Amazon. The Disney sitcom mashup fun continues for the current final installment of PrimeTime at the Parks, right after this. With the holidays right around the corner, the perfect gift for the theme park fans in your life is a scented candle or wax melt from Souvenir Scents. I've been enjoying my Souvenir Scents for a while now, and I've personally been loving them. They have all sorts of varieties, from a whole Pandoran collection including forest, ocean, and cave, to a pirate ride scent, butter brew scent, and so many more. So whether it's a treat for yourself or finding a gift for a hard-to-shop-for theme park-loving loved one, they're sure to love a product from Souvenir Scents. So go ahead and click on the link in this episode's description, plus you can save 10% off of your entire order simply by using code DCTC at checkout. Trust me when I say, your friends and family will love this unique gift in their stockings this holiday season.
Don't touch that remote, because you're tuned into PrimeTime at the Parks.
Hello, Diego, and welcome to Disney Coast to Coast. I know you've been listening for a long time. We met at the D23 Expo years ago, and now you're here. And thank you for being a patron of Disney Coast to Coast.
Happy to be here, Jeff.
Yeah, and I'm excited to talk to you about something that you are apparently a very big fan of, and that is, of course, we're doing a PrimeTime at the Parks episode, so we're talking about the TV sitcom Step by Step. And you told me you're a big fan of this show. I'm curious, what did you like about it, and when was the last time you watched an episode of it, but besides doing research for this episode?
Yeah, well, yeah, I was a big fan. Back here in Mexico, we had these sitcoms played very oddly. You know, you could watch them over the summer. They played it in the morning time. And as a kid, you just sit in front of the TV during all summer long, and you can watch all the seasons daily. So it was really fun. You could watch all these shows, Step by Step, Full House, Boy Meets World. So yeah, I'm very familiar with those. And I like Step by Step the best, because Full House I liked, and a lot of people like Full House better than Step by Step, I think. But what I like about Step by Step, I think it was a bit edgier, you know, it was like a little more grown up or of sorts. In Full House, I always felt the joke or the gag coming. You know, you could always tell what were they going to say. It was so predictable to me. And Step by Step was a little more modern and something different, I think. Even though they were really similar in the situation.
Well, I mean, you couldn't get more wholesome than Full House, right? Like, there was nothing edgy about Full House. There was a lot of sex talk on Step by Step, I will say. I mean, those were some horny parents on Step by Step. And now I'm curious, did you get it, like, during its original airing? Because it aired in America from 1991 through 98. So were you getting this, like, many years later or during that time?
Probably 1 or 2 years later, I think.
Okay. Yeah. So not too much of a delay. Interesting. Alrighty, well, let's jump into their Walt Disney World episodes, which, of course, they refuse to say Walt Disney World. They call it We're Going to Disney World, parts 1 and 2, episodes 522 and 523. And before we really jump into some of the, specific moments, do you want to give kind of a synopsis of why they're going to Walt Disney World and some of the shenanigans that go on?
Yeah, so in this episode, we start by seeing Grandma visiting the children, and I didn't remember her that well, to be honest. It was a forgettable character. I just remember that she and her son didn't like so much. So it was like a funny relationship. It was like they were always fighting and Frank was always complaining about her. So she appears in the front door and she says, okay, I have an inheritance advance for you. So I'm going to take you all on a trip on the first week of summer, which is the worst time to go to Walt Disney World, in my view. But yeah, she just showed up and said, okay, we're going there. And Frank and Carol are saying, no, but it's our anniversary and we've had all this thing planned and the kids are all excited. And she said, okay, so you decide, you can go to Walt Disney World or you can go on your little anniversary trip. So all the kids are on board going to Walt Disney World, and they end up doing it, I guess. So we have this is the reason they get there.
I should mention that I was a fan of the show as well. I watched it when it originally aired, part of TGIF, and I definitely watched it, but I wasn't like a diehard fan. I do remember, actually, it just popped in my mind, it was one of the first TV sets I ever walked on, because I took a tour of Warner Brothers Studios when I was vacationing here in LA with my family, and I remember walking onto that soundstage, and that was like a huge deal, and being like, oh my god, like I know this show and now I'm there, and it was like the coolest thing ever. But yeah, I was definitely a fan of it, watched, I don't know about every episode, but a lot of them for sure. I don't remember this grandmother character either. To be honest, I'm not sure if this is her one and only episode. It sounds like you remember her from some other episodes.
Yeah, I think so. She appears in one or two more episodes. Yeah.
Okay, so I get, listen, this is a perfectly good reason to go to Walt Disney World. Grandma's going to pay for the trip. Let's go. And frankly, if the parents had said no, there would have been a lot of problems there. But in any case, I want to jump to the first B-roll shot we get of Walt Disney World, because it's a shot of Magic Kingdom. Did you see what was there as part of it?
Do you mean the Mickey balloon?
Yes, a Mickey hot air balloon known as Air Force One. This thing just keeps popping up in these specials. I have never, in all my life going to Walt Disney World, have I ever seen a hot air balloon in the shape of a Mickey character or a Disney character in the air. I just love that this is a thing on some of these episodes.
I know, and I think we can all clearly remember this shot being on every Disney VHS. At the beginning of every Disney movie, you watch this shot of the Mickey hot air balloon over the Cinderella castle.
Yeah, so iconic, of course, but that's how they, that's the first shot we see of the resort. But we do see the characters show up at Disney's Old Key West resort. And one of the things that's super fascinating to me about this particular episode, I don't think any of the other sitcoms that I've talked about on this show did this. They actually shot in the hotel rooms. You looked out the windows, you saw the resort, you could tell I've stayed at Old Key West, this is the room. You
can see the Mickey handrail, and you can see the golf course, I think, behind them in the room. Yeah, I noticed that as well.
Yeah, so this was definitely props to them. It is interesting, though, they never mention where they are. They never say Old Key West Resort or anything like that. But yeah, they show up in a Disney Vacation Club vehicle, and that's where they're staying for their vacation, which is pretty cool. Now, a character is introduced in this scene that I gotta be honest, I don't remember Flash at all. Do you remember this character of Flash?
I do remember him. I remember him. He was hilarious. He's like this good-natured character. No, he sees no evil in anyone, and he's always positive, and he is there. And I did a little research. I don't know if you read about this, but he stood in for
Cody,
for the cousin Cody. Yeah. So you needed a character like that to be part of the show. So when the actor Sasha Mitchell had all these troubles in his personal life, he couldn't attend the recording. So Flash was thrown in the series.
Yeah, so Flash to me felt like a human version of Shaggy from Scooby-Doo. Like that was kind of the energy he had. And then, yeah, like you said, the actor who played Cody, he got into some trouble for domestic abuse. And so he ended up leaving the show. And I think Flash was only in like 5 episodes, I believe. And Frank had hired him as a handyman. I mean, it was kind of ridiculous that he was there. There was really no reason for it. But hey, this guy who did like 5 episodes of the series got to go do 2 of them at Walt Disney World. So like, lucky him is what I have to say.
I know, and he has a big part. He plays a big part in these episodes.
He does, indeed. In fact, his storyline is that he wants to break the Russian record of riding every ride in 4 days. Not only every ride, but these are the numbers they mention. These numbers are terribly wrong, but they say 107 rides, 197 restaurants and food carts, and 177 souvenir stands in 4 days. I did some research on this, and we're nowhere near 107 rides today. So back in 1996, before Animal Kingdom was even open, like, this is just inaccurate. But listen, I feel like everybody's talked about that. I'm going to do every ride in 1 day, and you try to get in as many as you can. But that was his storyline. That was his goal in this episode.
Yeah, I know. And I noticed in this episode, I don't know if you agree, but in all the sitcoms, they all get these inaccuracies about Disney and the parks and the attractions and everything. But I think this episode was especially wrong in everything. The names of the attractions, the placement of the things, all the dynamics that goes into the parks and Walt Disney World. They didn't care. It was written by someone who don't know Disney that well, in my view.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I felt as strongly about that as you, because one thing that they did do that I appreciated, that I feel like a lot of sitcoms don't do properly, is when he had to go to Epcot to do the rides at Epcot, we actually saw him go on the monorail to get there. Whereas usually it's just like they'll hop back and forth. There'll be no rhyme or reason for it. But I was like, okay, they actually like recognize this as a separate location. You need some transportation to get there. They did get that. But yes, as far as Flash, like one of the things that was crazy during this whole montage sequence, we have him running from like food cart to souvenir stand back and forth and like literally grabbing stuff and not paying for anything. I was like, okay, we can't even, back in 96, we can't even say, oh, Magic Band tap. No, none of that existed. Like, he was essentially stealing, but the cast members were handing him this stuff for free. Like, it was crazy.
I know, to me, that was so unrealistic. And yeah, he's there, as you mentioned, to break this Russian guy's record that holds for visiting all the attractions. And at first, we see him, like, resting on a bench, you know? So Mark and Brennan, the little kid, go up to him and said, oh, what are you doing? What are you doing here? I already visited 23 attractions. I'm on my track, no? So they tell him, no, you have to hurry because you have to visit all these food carts and all this merchandise and everything. So Brendan, you just go and lead the advanced team and you hold the line for Flash in every single attraction. And I'm going to be in Disney in the attraction center or something like that.
Yeah, Ride Central. Yeah.
Ride Central. I'm going to be in Ride Central and I'm going to tell you where to go and what to do. And so Mark goes to Ride Central, which is like, I don't know, like NASA.
It was all the security cameras all over the parks. And yeah, this was the most far-fetched thing. And somehow Mark ends up in Ride Central and he's there with Disney cast members and they're like talking to Flash through a giant cell phone, I believe. And they're like, okay, now you got to head this way. And I was like, okay, this is insane. Like, there's no way that this kid would be allowed in Ride Central. But it was weird because like once this character Flash decided, hey, I'm going to break this whole record, all of a sudden the Walt Disney Company was like, fully supporting him, totally behind him. Like, cast members were doing everything they could do to help him out. And it ends, just to fast forward a bit, it ends on the stage in front of Cinderella Castle with a giant celebration with Mickey Mouse. And I'm just like, all right, this this would never happen.
Everybody cheering for him. All the crowds are there waiting for him to break the record. Yeah, I know. And talking about how unrealistic this is, or how they didn't care, I remember that in Flash's storyline, Mark is at the right central, and he's calling Flash over the phone or this walkie-talkie or something, and he says, no, Flash is in Astro Orbiter, I think. And Mark tells him, no, you can't go to the extraterrestrial alien encounter. You have to go through Fantasyland and to Adventureland because the parade is going through. And I'm like, the parade route is not at Tomorrowland, so what are you talking about? The alien encounter is just in front of Astro Orbiter. What are you talking about?
You're right. There were quite a few moments like that. But listen, the general person watching is not paying attention to that, just as Disney nerds. But yes, it can certainly be frustrating. Another thing, separate from this storyline, but like right when they get to Magic Kingdom, one of the girls says, do you want to go to the haunted house? And I was like, oh, man, but to be fair, that is kind of realistic. I feel like a lot of guests do say stuff like that, where you're like, it's obviously, we know it's the Haunted Mansion, but like a lot of guests would be like, let's go to the haunted house. So as annoying as that can be, I also think it's kind of realistic.
Yeah, and I think the other sister, Al, responds like, no, I want to go to the Jungle Boat ride. Yeah,
the Jungle Boat ride, right? So this is a very uneducated Disney family, or, you know, they need to listen to this podcast, essentially. So, too bad it didn't exist in 1996.
I'm sure there's people like that they don't care. They just say, okay, let's go on the Jungle Boat ride and let's go to the parade. They don't care about naming and stuff.
Yeah, and that's fine. I think that's most people, to be completely fair. But yeah, one of the moments at the beginning that I think is really funny is the moment where everybody decides they're all going to run off in different directions, and the dad ends up having to like hold on to everything. And it just makes me think, I'm like, everybody has this family member where it's like, for me, it was my mom. She didn't do like a ton of the rides. She's not an adventurous ride person. So anytime there was anything the least bit scary, she'd be like, I found my bench, give me your bags, give me your crap, go, I'll be here type of person. And it just made me laugh that like, that is super accurate in my mind. Seeing the kids throw all their crap to their dad or parents, I think is super accurate.
There's always someone like that. And to me, what's funny is that, yeah, in the sitcom as a whole, they are all horny, right? Especially the parents. But in this episode in particular, they are all horny. So Frank and Carol they want to celebrate their anniversary, and they are like, okay, let's go to Peter Pan. It's a ride in the dark, and you know what happens when we are in the dark. So, and to me, it's funny that the kids arrive and, okay, take care of this, take my purse, take my shoes, take this. We're going on the rides. We don't care. Even Grandma has a friend or something.
Yeah, Grandma's horny. JT and his buddy is horny. Like, you're right. It should have been called The Horniest Place on Earth. That should have been the name of the episode. But yeah. Oh, one of the things, speaking of JT, I loved what is his buddy's name? Played by Jason Marsden, who I absolutely adored on this show.
I think.
Rich, okay. So when they get out of Pirates of the Caribbean, they're singing Yo Ho, Yo Ho, A Pirate's Life for Me. And then they're like, Yo Ho, A Pirate's Life for Me. And then they start getting into the lyrics and they can't remember the words. And I'm like, you know what? As many times as I've ridden that thing, that's actually pretty darn accurate. I don't even know the true words to Yo Ho.
You always get out of that ride singing the tune and you don't know it at all.
Nope. It's true. I'm sure they're great lyrics. And, you know, when I hear them, I'm like, that's clever, but I don't know them by heart. So I thought that was funny when they're like, I don't know the rest of that, but that was funny. But then they're looking for food. And this was weird to me. They're looking at a map for food and they go, we have Italian, seafood, Chinese. I'm like, is there Chinese food in Magic Kingdom? was there? Like, I don't know any.
Of course there's not. But there's also, well, they're looking for food because they found these girls that are like, oh, we're looking for something. So they start helping them. And it's funny because they say, okay, we have Italian, Chinese, which of course is not right. And the girls come up with, oh, we want to go to Paneras. And I'm like, what? What's that? And JT comes with this idea of, oh, this is your lucky day, ladies, because I happen to own Paneras. And I'm like, what's Paneras? No, I happen to own the whole resort. Let me introduce myself. I'm JT Dizney. So he passes himself for a member of the Disney family, which at that point, if I am correct, has had nothing to do with the company anymore. So, well, maybe Roy Disney and yeah.
But there was a great line here because they said something like, oh my gosh, you're related to Walt? And he says, I don't like to talk about it much. I still miss him. And I was like, I mean, that made me laugh. It was a good line delivery, I gotta say.
Even though I didn't meet him because of the of the timeline, I miss him.
Yeah, so you're right. So I had the same reaction when they said Panetta's. And I was like, Panetta's? Well, no, I certainly don't claim to know every food location at Walt Disney World, but like I had never heard of Panetta's, and they're talking about it as this really high-end restaurant. So we do get a scene at Panetta's. Do you know what that building actually was?
No, I couldn't tell. I think it was at Disney Springs.
It was actually the Portobello Yacht Club in Pleasure Island. And they just put some fake signs on it and made it this place Panetta's. Still not 100% sure why they wouldn't use a real place. I think part of it, at least these are the theories online. Part of it is they were like specifically looking for an expensive restaurant. And maybe Disney was like, we don't want people to think of this as like a place that's expensive to vacation at. So they didn't give like a real restaurant name. But interestingly, the entire storyline of JT and his friend is that they are essentially like blowing a ton of money on these girls at Walt Disney World. So, I mean, that's accurate, right?
You do, as you do every time you go to Disney.
So this episode, of course, in 1996 was quite a long time ago. So it definitely has some nostalgia moments in there, at least for me. We got some stuff like in Magic Kingdom, we see Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, which hasn't been there for quite some time, as it's now Winnie the Pooh. One of the things that always shocks me, though, whenever I see Magic Kingdom Fantasyland, I am so used to Disneyland's Fantasyland that I can't believe that it still has kind of like the tent fair sort of feeling to it. I know like the new Fantasyland expansions have moved beyond that, but I'm always like kind of surprised that it doesn't have that European village feel of Disneyland. How about some nostalgia moments for you? Is there anything that you saw that you were like, oh man, I missed that, or oh, remember when?
I loved at Epcot seeing Innoventions when Flash is doing all his record thing. He's like, I'm at Innoventions, and I'm like, wow, that's a throwback to me.
You were a big Innoventions fan? That's so funny. I never spent too much time in there.
I don't know. Back then we had a show in Mexico that was called like Club Disney or something. And the kids in the show got to Walt Disney World every time they could. So they showed off every single attraction and every single thing. So in that type of show, you had to make all these little things like a big thing, a big deal. And they talked wonders about Innoventions. Yeah, it wasn't a big deal, but I have fond memories of it, of my childhood going there and like, oh, this is the house of the future, you know, and this is the color lab and everything. I had a good time there.
One of the things at Epcot that they showed that I'm just like, oh, I can't believe it's gone, is the Fountain of Nations. That they had a really kind of fun shot with Flash during his montage running past it. And of course, the fountains are going off. You see his silhouette as he jumps up in the air right in front of Spaceship Earth and such. I mean, I know it hasn't even been gone that long, but I just still can't believe it's gone. It's so crazy to me.
It's totally different now, yeah. And you were talking about Mr. Toads, and I think it was funny when they were in the room, Frank and Carol, and she tells him like, okay, I'm taking you to Mrs. Lambert's wild ride. I thought that was really funny.
I also liked seeing the old Tomorrowland sign entrance. I prefer the old sign. I know, and it's actually kind of weird that I prefer that because I tend to go with more minimalism design. That's just my preference. But I don't know. I think it's too minimal for me these days. And that other sign was kind of cool looking. So I liked seeing the old entrance sign again.
For sure. It was cool. And also I like seeing Pleasure Island. I think that was at a big marketing push at the moment. So they had to show it, and it plays an important part in the story of the episode because the sisters are there and there's like this talent contest or something. And Karen had shown that she wanted to be a singer, I think, in previous episodes. So she's like, oh, here's the moment. It could be my big break. So the three girls spend the entire vacation in the hotel room rehearsing for this festival or contest in the Neon Armadillo.
Exactly, yeah. So we're kind of getting a little bit into the next episode here. So this is episode 523. Okay. No, that's fine. This is episode 523. We're going to Disney World Part 2. And so Pleasure Island, you mentioned, that was something that I found interesting to see as well. It was funny because, like, I remember seeing Pleasure Island as a kid, never spent a ton of time there. I think the most time I spent there was I went to the Comedy Warehouse once. And I do remember walking by the Adventurers Club, and I still will never forgive myself for not going in. But I didn't. So, like, I don't have a lot of personal memories of Pleasure Island, but it is one of the things that stuck out to me was the neon sign of Jessica Rabbit. I had totally forgotten about that, but that was like such an iconic image in Pleasure Island.
Every time you were there, you would see it. Well, to me, it was cool. As a kid, I didn't spend much time there either, but I think it was cool. I remember walking by in daytime. Even I didn't even went at nighttime. So, but there was a big marketing campaign behind it. So in every VHS and in every Disney show, they would mention it and say, oh, here's New Year's Eve every day. So you can come and enjoy it. So I think it was fun to watch it in an episode.
I do like that concept of Pleasure Island, celebrating New Year's Eve every night. I think that that's a really fun concept. I wish I had experienced it more, but it was kind of interesting looking at Pleasure Island and knowing that like that area is Disney Springs today. And just compared to how gorgeous Disney Springs is, I was like, oh my God, Pleasure Island looks like crap compared.
I know, but the girls are there. They're horny and they say, oh, I can see why they call it Pleasure Island.
The horniest place on earth. There we go. At the beginning of episode 2, we do start at the Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular, which, of course, I love. One of the things I found super interesting here is that they actually use the Indiana Jones music theme. And I was like, wow, they actually licensed that because Disney didn't own it at that point. And to hear that music play in the episode, I thought was kind of interesting, especially when it comes to something later where they chose not to use copyrighted music that I'll touch upon later. But yeah, they used, that classic John Williams score as part of the episode. And unfortunately, of course, Flash has to do this attraction as part of his doing everything list. And the show he's going to go to, he runs into a kid that's like, it's the number one thing the kid wants to do. And unfortunately, the show is canceled. Now, the response from the cast member is one of the most realistic things in the episode because the excuse is that it seems that Indiana Jones got waylaid by a tribe of angry nomads. And I was like, of course they would say something like that.
Yeah, that is totally realistic. And Flash is talking to the kid and the kid is like, yeah, I'm so excited. Indiana Jones is my favorite. And I saved it for last. And I was like, okay, that is unrealistic. A kid that loves some attraction is not going to leave it for last.
Yeah, you do it for the second time last. How about that?
Totally.
Yeah, so the show's canceled, and Flash is like, "Oh, I can't disappoint this kid." So Flash
Great
ends
impression of Flash, by the way.
I mean, it's kind of what he talks like, right? Like I'm telling you, it's Shaggy. It's crazy.
I gotta break the record.
So Flash decides to perform the role of Indiana Jones, which, listen, it's a sitcom, I get it, but this is so far-fetched, it's ridiculous that he is just like, yeah, I'll play the role, and the Disney guy's like, all right, cool, show's back on, and now this kid is happy, and...
I love the line, I even wrote it down, like, he says like, oh, can we talk in your office for a minute? Sure, why not? Yeah, a Disney cast member is going to tell you that. Okay, come into my office, no problem.
Yeah, it was a bit of a ridiculous moment for sure. But listen, we got some Indiana Jones epic stunt spectacular, and that always makes me happy. Then we get more into that whole the country music concert, or the contest rather, like you said, at the Neon Armadillo Music Saloon. I don't remember this location at all at Walt Disney World or Pleasure Island. Do you remember this?
No, I don't. Maybe I just remember it because of this sitcom.
Yeah. I gotta be honest, this was the most boring part of the episode for me. It was like a $500 scholarship that they were fighting for, and the sister who wants to perform ends up being a jerk to her two other sisters who are going to be the backup singers, and then she gets stage fright and can't do it without them, yada yada. I'm like, this is an unnecessary storyline. Like, it's very boring.
What I loved about that, and I gotta say, is a line, okay, Miss Queen of the Nashville Nazis.
You like that line, Queen of the Nashville Nazis? Too funny.
It's a great title.
So, we also get to see a bit of the Tower of Terror. Now, of course, this being a show on ABC, we have to avoid the Twilight Zone at all costs because the Twilight Zone was a CBS show. So we get some Tower of Terror footage, which is great, but I always love how, and this happens in quite a few of the sitcoms, where the characters go on the ride and, they're surprised that it's gonna drop. What's gonna happen? Oh, we're gonna fall 13 stories. It's like, what? Who goes near that ride without knowing? I don't know. It was 96, so what? I guess the attraction had only been open for 2 years, but... regardless, I always find that comical.
It was an iconic ride since the beginning, right? It was at the billboards when you entered Walt Disney World. It was in every single commercial. They made a big deal out of it. You couldn't know, and you went through the queue, through the pre-show, into the elevator, and oh, nice view. And now what happens? We dropped 13 stories. What? Man, come on. I loved how they switched from the marketing B-roll. They start dropping on the elevator, and you see the shot we have seen a million times of the arrow going around outside the elevator, and the cast member. I think the cast member was the same in the marketing material as in the sitcom. Could you tell?
I think in the past they've actually used cast members for some of those roles, because there are definitely a couple of Tower of Terror people I've seen pop up in multiple sorts of things. So that wouldn't surprise me. We also get that B-roll footage shot of the camera dropping down the elevator shaft. And yeah, it's interesting because, obviously that was shot in 94 or sooner, and they have used it in everything. Like every sitcom that's shot there has used it. Every commercial, TV special, Disney parade on television, whatever. They always show these two shots, like you said, the arrow spinning and the elevator shaft, and they didn't disappoint here. But I am curious, did you notice one drastic difference on the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror in this episode versus what it is today?
It had just one drop? Is that it?
It had a lap bar.
Oh, yeah.
This was back when Tower of Terror had lap bars instead of individual seat belts. And I actually remember as a kid, that was part of what scared me about it. I had this fear of sitting next to somebody a lot bigger than me, and the lap bar wouldn't come down far enough on me, and, flying out of it. And I'm sure that's why they ended up having to change that and replace it. But yeah, that was in this episode, 96. Like I said, it had only been open for 2 years. Those seatbelts didn't come until 2002. So I always find that fascinating. That's how you can tell if it's old footage or newer footage. And by new, obviously, it's been like almost 20 years at this point with the seatbelts. But yeah, lap bars in the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror. Then we have a scene in Epcot with the family. This is kind of the conclusion of their vacation. They all had a great time, and we end up at Illuminations. And first of all, talk about nostalgia, already missing Illuminations. But I will say that, did you notice the music that they played during Illuminations?
I did not.
It was super patriotic, like Stars and Stripes Forever sorts of stuff. And I'm like, okay, you could get the licensing rights for the Indiana Jones Raiders March, but you couldn't get the licensing rights to the Illuminations music, which you own? I couldn't figure this out. Why was it not the classic score for Illuminations? That kind of blew my mind.
I didn't notice it. It was kind of in the background, right? It was like really low.
They were definitely having a conversation during, their viewing of Illuminations. So it was background, but it was noticeable. I just thought it was a weird choice who did they have to pay rights to? I would assume nobody to use that music, but who knows? Maybe because it was a Warner Brothers production. I don't know what the contract said, but yeah, so they kind of end the trip there. But of course, Flash does break the record, as we said, when he does it. They clear Main Street for him. He goes running down the center of it, straight to the stage in front of Cinderella Castle. Mickey's there waiting for him. The whole family's there waiting for him. And he succeeds, and he brings breaks the record and brings the record back to America instead of to this random Russian guy.
I love that. In this last scene, they are all waiting in the castle, and Brandon, the smallest kid in the family, doesn't speak much in the entire episode, but he's there in the castle, and he's like, he's gonna make it! He's really gonna make it! That was his big line at the front of the castle.
What happens with a lot of those younger actors is they're super cute and adorable when they're young, and then, like, this was toward the end of the series. Sometimes they just can't act well anymore, and they're like, well, we can't kick him off the show, but we'll give him as little to do as possible. I don't know if that was the case with this kid, but I've definitely noticed on a lot of sitcoms that happens. But yeah, so that was basically the whole episode. I mean, I thought it was one of the better ones, having gone through all of these Primetime at the Parks now. I thought this was one of the better ones. I enjoyed it. It felt, was it believable? I would say a good portion of it was, but there was a lot of stuff that was like, BS for sure. But I don't know. What do you think?
I agree. I think it's one of the episodes that shows better the Disney experience, because you have in other sitcoms, you have these episodes that they spend a whole lot of time in the room or, doing something or having an argument, and you don't see much of the parks. You don't see much of the experience. I felt like this episode reflected the experience of a family going to Walt Disney World and don't knowing everything, and everybody spreading up and meeting at the end of the day for the fireworks. I think it was cool. I definitely liked it back then, and I liked it now.
I also would say that this is one of the few that actually hit up every single park. I feel, obviously Disney's Animal Kingdom didn't exist yet, but it hit the 3 that did exist at the time. And a lot of the sitcoms didn't do that. A lot of them kind of stayed in one park or did like Magic Kingdom and Epcot, but forgot about Disney's Hollywood Studios. So I thought that was kind of a nice point to it as well. One of the questions I always ask with a Primetime at the Parks is, did it feel like a commercial? And I didn't really think so. I mean, I don't feel like they were shoving tons of stuff in our face. Maybe Pleasure Island, but even still, they developed a whole storyline for that area. So it didn't feel super commercial to me.
Yeah, it feels like you are with the family experiencing the parks. I like that part about it. And I don't know why Flash got a big part of the storyline, but I think it worked. I like being with him and having all this excitement and showing all these attractions, classic attractions, new attractions. I think it was well balanced.
I can't remember now. Did we get the classic Splash Mountain shot in this show?
Yeah, we did.
We did with Flash, right?
Yeah,
okay.
In this montage.
I was going to say that classic shot of the But like, so there's so many people in this world who have no idea that there's like a whole dark ride sequence inside of Splash Mountain, because all that they know of it is that drop from every single sitcom with that iconic shot. Yeah, if that's if that's all you know of Splash Mountain, there's a lot more to it. But soon there will be none to it, I guess. In any case, the other thing is, did it make sense for this sitcom? I think it did. I watched this sitcom. I know it pretty well. All of the characters were doing things that made sense for them at this point in the series. I thought it made sense. I didn't find it to be that crazy unbelievable.
Yeah, I did too. And I like that you see the characters as they were. No, they didn't change in some of these episodes. They changed their personalities, and they do things that are not plausible, I guess, or meet the Bible or the criteria for their characters. So this was pretty much in character for every one of them.
Yeah. Now, I'm curious. I know you said you watched this kind of at weird hours, like during the daytime and such, but did you have TGIF in Mexico? Was that a thing?
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
Oh,
so
sorry, you
like
mean
the TV lineup? Sorry.
I meant the restaurant.
No. Did you have the TV lineup, TGIF?
Well, we had kind of a similar thing. We didn't have... we had like this prime time for kids. Let's call it that.
Okay, on Friday nights sort of thing. Yeah, because I guess it wouldn't be "Thank God It's Friday." How would you say that in Spanish? I don't even know.
Gracias a Dios es viernes.
So what 4 letters would that be?
GADIV. Wow, that's complicated.
That does not have the same ring to it as TGIF.
It doesn't.
That's so funny. But yeah, listen, this was totally part of my childhood. I enjoyed it. I gotta say, I honestly didn't remember the episode. Rewatching it, I didn't have like strong memories of this whatsoever. But I enjoyed it. And who knows, maybe one of these days I'll go back and watch the full series. It's definitely like some of those old TGIF shows, like I have a hard time sitting through now. This was one I was like, nah, this isn't too schmaltzy or anything. Like, listen, it's a TGIF sitcom, but it wasn't that unbearable. So I kind of liked it.
Yeah, I remember back in Mexico, at least with my friends, it was a big deal. Everybody talked like Cody. So we were all like saying the Spanish word for dude. We got into the classroom and say, hola, socio. And we kind of talked like him. So, it was funny. I think it was very famous in Mexico, more than other sitcoms that you have talked about in this series. It's a good series.
I just find it funny because like this show was my introduction to Suzanne Summers and Patrick Duffy. And it wasn't until years later that I was like, oh, these were like 2 stars, but like who each had their own shows before this. To me, they were the parents on Step by Step. And I was like, no, they were like the star vehicle for this sitcom. So that's always funny to look at it through a different lens as an adult. But in any case, anything else you want to add before we get to some trivia?
No, I think we're okay.
All right, let's hit some trivia then.
Do you know the answer? Get your brain gears churning and play along. It's trivia time.
Alrighty, Diego, do you want to hit me with a trivia question first, or shall I hit you?
Why don't you hit me?
All right, I got a couple for you, but I'll start with one here. On the episode, we see them staying at Disney's old Key West resort, but what was the original name of this resort?
Oh my gosh. I thought originally when watching the episode that it was Caribbean Beach.
No. So Caribbean Beach is still around today. That was not Caribbean Beach. It was Old Key West. You don't know what it was originally called?
No.
It was a very basic name based on a service that was brand new. Do you know like what kind of villas are at Old Key West?
A service? A Disney service?
A Disney service program, timeshare.
No. Oh, DVC?
Yeah, it was originally called the Disney Vacation Club Resort, and the name changed in January of 1996. So originally it was like the original DVC resort, And when it was just the one, that's what they called it, the Disney Vacation Club Resort. Then when they started expanding and building so many more, it's like, okay, well, this will be confusing if this is the DVC Resort and these other things with different names aren't called that. So at that point, it became the old Key West Resort.
That makes sense because today. I noticed a lot of branding of the Disney Vacation Club. So I thought that was just promoting it. I didn't know it was called that.
Yeah. Although at that point, when the episode aired, I think because in January of 96, it changed names. So by the time this aired, I think it was Old Key West at that point. But still, there was a lot of the vehicle that came up was DVC. And it was the DVC Resort. So there's that.
Cool.
Alrighty, what's your trivia for me?
Okay, I have a little different trivia. I don't know if that's okay with you.
That's okay.
Because I'm from Mexico, I wanted to ask you something related to Walt Disney and Mexico. He took some trips over here. He was beloved here. So I had 2 questions for you. Do you know which title did the Mexican government honor Walt with?
Oh no. I Mexican ambassador? I have no idea.
Something like that. It's the highest honor the Mexican government can give to a visitor. It's called the Aztec Order. So he was named like a knight, I guess, of the Aztec Order in Mexico.
Oh, do you know when that happened? Like when in his lifetime?
I am guessing like the 50s or so.
Huh.
More or less.
Interesting. I didn't even... That guy has more awards than I think any of us ever will realize. But that's cool. Did you say you had another trivia question for me?
I have another about, again, Mexico and Disney and Walt Disney. In Mexico, we have a very famous children's music composer. And he had a character in his songs. He had like this stage name, which was a character which was called Cri Cri. And it is based, the character of Cri Cri, in a Disney movie character. More concrete, in Pinocchio. It's a Pinocchio character.
My guess would be Jiminy Cricket.
He is.
There we go.
Yeah.
So is that like something that was like created when you were a kid, or is that like something really old that's stuck around all this time?
No, really old, and it's stuck around, and you still sing the songs when you're a kid here.
Interesting. Huh. I did not know that at all. There we go. Some Mexican Disney trivia. I like it. I got one more for you. In the episode, we see the character of Flash perform the role of Indiana Jones in the Epic Stunt Spectacular. What other characters or celebrities have performed this role on television? There are 3 others I could come up with. I'm curious if you, and I've talked about them on this show, I think probably all of them.
Whoa.
Yeah.
What I'm sure about it is Steve from Full House.
Yep, Steve from Full House. The episode was The House Meets the Mouse Part 2 in 1993.
Okay, and... No, I have no clue about the other 2.
Okay, Kermit the Frog plays the role of Indiana Jones in The Muppets at Walt Disney World in 1990, which was a TV movie. And then Donnie Wahlberg played the role in New Kids on the Block at Disney MGM Studios' Wildest Dreams in 1991. Do you know New Kids on the Block?
Yeah, I know them.
Yeah, so Donnie Wahlberg performed the role, and those were all in like TV specials. Plus Flash, that makes 4. I think those are the only 4. I'd be actually really curious if anybody listening knows of any other celebrities or fictional characters to have taken on that role in the Epic Stunt Spectacular. Call in or write in or let me know, because I'd be curious to know. But those are the ones I can think of, and like I said, I just always love it that they fit people into that role as if like that's something that could happen. It cracks me up. But in any case, yay. Well, Diego, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it and talking about Step by Step. Thank you once again for being a patron of Disney Coast to Coast over at patreon.com/DisneyCTC. And anything you want to plug or add before we get going here?
No, I want to invite everyone to join Patreon and support DCTC, which is the best Disney podcast in my view.
People are going to think I paid you for that, but hey, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I know you've been listening for a long time, and I know it was a pleasure to meet you at D23. I hope I see you at the next one. And thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun.
Sure. Thank you, Jeff.
I hope you all enjoyed today's conversation. As I mentioned at the top, this does conclude the Primetime at the Park segments of Disney Coast to Coast until a new sitcom hits the parks, as we've now covered every single sitcom that has had a Disney Parks episode. This includes Full House, Family Matters, Roseanne, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, Blossom, Modern Family, Blackish, The Goldbergs, Boy Meets World, The Middle, George Lopez, According to Jim, The Golden Girls, and now Step by Step. If I'm missing any that you know of, be sure and let me know. This segment began back during Season 5 of Disney Coast to Coast, but concludes today during Season 8. If you'd like to listen to any or all of those previous sitcom episodes I just listed, you can find a link to the Primetime at the Parks playlist in the show notes. On the last couple of episodes, we talked about the latest Disney news, as well as a special interview with Muppeteer Bill Beretta as we discussed Muppets Haunted Mansion. I'll be back next week with more Disney news, followed by a special Thanksgiving conversation the next week. The easiest way to make sure you don't miss any of the magic is by subscribing to Disney Coast to Coast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Wherever you search, don't forget, it's Disney with a Z, Coast to Coast. You can find any links and info mentioned in this episode by checking out the show note link in this episode's description. This episode has been executive produced by Robert Scontrino. Gain rewards like Robert by visiting patreon.com/Disney with a Z, CTC. And don't forget to leave a voicemail at 818-860-2569 to share your thoughts on today's conversation, or let me know which was your favorite Primetime at the Parks episode. You can find that number in this episode's description, along with a link for some free gifts from me to you. Other than that, folks, have a magical day. Bye!
Thanks for listening to Disney Coast to Coast. Have a magical day.
Disney Coast to Coast is produced and hosted by Jeff DePauli. Learn more about the podcast and become a supporter at DisneyCoastToCoast.com. This podcast is part of the DePodcast Network. Learn more about this show, plus find more quality and entertaining podcasts at DePodcastNetwork.com. That's DEPodcastNetwork.com.